Hi everybody, this is Marlene with Eerie.News, and today is May 7th, 2022, Saturday, May 7th, 2022, and let's get going. The first story that we're going to go to is featured on the Stranger Than Fiction stories, and it's titled Aussies Ghost. And in the 1930s, Oswald Ozzie Nelson and Harriet Nelson became famous on the radio show The Baker's Broadcast. In 1944, they launched their own radio show, The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, which later became a well-known sitcom by the same name that ran on television from 1952 to 1966. The house on the set was modeled after their real home, which would eventually develop a reputation for being haunted. The house is located on 1822 Camino Palmero Street in Los Angeles, Hollywood Hills. It was built in 1916 for prominent Los Angeles businessman Harold G. Farrard on a sloping half-acre parcel in the exclusive Las Colinas Heights subdivision. Architects Frank Kegley and H. Scott Garrity designed it in a colonial revival style. In 1937, the bank put it up for sale for $16,500. Then cowboy actor Dick Foran lived at the house with his wife Madeline Piper Hollingsworth and their two children. In 1940, as part of their divorce agreement, she gave up the claim to the house and he stayed there. She had charged him with cruelty during the divorce suit. Things didn't go good for Dick. A few months later, he was arrested, pleading guilty to a drunk charge after fighting the arresting officers. By the way, if in the picture, for those of you watching the video, you look at that picture of Dick, obviously when he's getting arrested, and you know some of these pictures of people when they're drunk and getting arrested there don't look their best, but he did a lot of cowboy movies. He was like 6'3", and he was always like a minor, not a minor, like a secondary support actor in B cowboy movies, but he did a lot of them. If you see him in his cowboy outfit, you'd probably recognize him right away. The Nelsons purchased the two-story property in 1941, and the exterior shots of The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet show featured the actual house. The family lived there until 1975, when Ozzie died from liver cancer in the house. Harriet moved to another house they owned in Laguna Beach. She died in 1994. According to the real estate agency that handled the sale of the house 3 times, paranormal occurrences were reported not only by those who had lived there, but by workmen as well. The apparition of Ozzie is seen walking throughout the house. He's been seen eating ice cream in the kitchen, which was something he liked to do when living. The occupants would wake in the early morning to find a drawer containing the ice cream scooper pulled ajar. He also visits the pub room, where he had a model train set that would run on its own. Renovations throughout the years have changed the layout of the house as it was during the time the Nelsons lived there. However, the exterior is much the same as when it was built over 100 years ago. The family that occupied the house in the late 1970s complained of lights and faucets turning on and off by themselves, hearing footsteps, and witnessing doors opening and closing without anyone being around them. There were times when the smell of rose-scented perfume wafted through the air. A woman who lived there during the time described feeling a spirit pull back the bedsheet and sometimes kiss her neck and breasts. In 1994, a painter described seeing a white misty form near him and hearing footsteps as well. Which, by the way, when I saw that 1994, I remembered that Harriet died in 1994, so maybe what he saw was Harriet coming by to check out her old house. This is just my theory, of course. Anyway, despite the persona Ozzie Nelson cultivated for his TV character, historians have described him as being an authoritarian figure that micromanaged his family's life, especially those of his 2 sons, David and Ricky. He quashed plans for them to attend college, insisting that they continue to work in show business. As a workaholic, he no doubt loved his children, but the family business came first. Rick Nelson went on to have his own musical career. He died in a plane crash on December 31st, 1985, at the age of 45, on the way to a concert in Texas when he was struggling to revive his singing career. The house was featured as Ari Gold's house in the HBO show Entourage. In 2014, actor Christopher Maloney purchased the home, which, despite having been the abode of a wholesome family, had acquired a reputation of being very haunted. In May of 2022, according to Dirt, the house was sold in an off-market deal to director Rawson Marshall Thurber for $5.9 million. It had gone on the market originally in 2020 for $6.5 million. It was removed from the open market shortly thereafter and rented out for $29,500 per month. Question is, does this house still deserve its reputation as being haunted? Does Ozzie Nelson still walk through the house checking out the renovations and wondering where his train set went? Or has he gone on to the greatest adventure of them all? And I'm going to go on to the second story, and you'll see why. It's just a little theme. This is featured on Eerie.News. All right, and basically it's the flip side of having what they call a haunted house, which to some potential buyers is quaint, and you will have people that actually want that. And this is titled, "Want to buy undervalued real estate? Choose one where murder's been committed." Home buyers will fork over money for a supposedly haunted house, especially if it's offered at a bargain price. However, the very act that sometimes is a source for a haunting, like a murder, is the death knell, no pun intended, for future sales. It's been reported that Americans are most likely to consider purchasing a haunted house if it has a lower sale price. 63% of Americans will do it. 57% of Americans if it's in a safer neighborhood, or 53% if it has friendly ghosts. But all of this changes if murder has been committed within its walls, especially if it occurred in recent years. In May of 2015, 4 people were killed inside a home in the Woodley Park neighborhood of Washington, D.C. Savas and Amy Savopoulos, along with their 10-year-old son Philip and their housekeeper Veralicia Figueroa, were held hostage for 19 hours. The boy was tortured in order to force the parents to pay $40,000 in cash. The crime became known as the Mansion Murders. The house, like others who have violent incidents committed within its walls, became known as a stigmatized property, which is defined as those who have been psychologically impacted by crime. It all comes down to karma, and most homeowners prefer a home with a good one. Before the murder, the Savopoulos home was valued at $4.6 million, according to tax records. Even though the house had been damaged by fire, real estate agents considered it could be easily restored. The house on the corner property at 2802 32nd Street Northwest, which previously had the address of 3201 Woodland Drive Northwest, went up for sale in November of 2015 for $3.5 million. A listing said the house would be sold as is. It was clear there had been a fire, and there was a red crime scene seal on the door. The tainted property sold a few months later for $3 million, which was considered a bargain. The new owners demolished the brick house and had an architect design a beautiful new home, which included a pool. However, for some unknown reason, they changed their mind and put the property up for sale in 2018. In August of 2021, the vacant lot sold for $2.6 million after it languished on the market for years. In other words, the sellers took a loss in the transaction. A home in the nearby neighborhood with a similar sized lot went on the market for $6.3 million. The new owners, and by the way, from what I understand, in this area, this is a very upscale part of Washington, D.C., to find a lot, first the house, or then let's say the lot of that size, is very rare. All right, as to why the owners, after buying the house, demolishing it, having architects design a new house, I'm sure specifically for that size lot, just put it up for sale. Who knows? Maybe they had their own economic problems. It's unknown. But then that leaves a big question mark. And they sold it at a loss. So it goes on to say the new owner claims he doesn't believe in ghosts, but he was reported as saying, "Even my contractor asked if he could hold a little seance at the property. I laughed and said, 'You can do whatever the hell you want. I don't care. I don't believe in ghosts and goblins.'" Many states do not obligate sellers and real estate agents to disclose a murder or other event that could stigmatize the property. And from what I understand, I know each state is different. Some of them are forced to, but there's others that are forced to say it unless they're asked. In other words, they can't lie about it, but, lying by omission, unless you specifically ask, they're not forced to disclose that. Now take the case of Brian Betts, a middle school principal. He bought a house at the address of 9337 Columbia Boulevard, Silver Springs, Maryland. It was changed in 2012 to 9335 due to the notoriety of crimes committed at the address. It was a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath brick house built in 1936. However, it had a recent and dark history he did not know about. In 2002, George Russell, former deputy director of the Maryland Port Administration, and his 9-year-old daughter Erica were shot to death inside the home. When Betts bought the house in 2003, he was ignorant of what transpired inside its walls. Once he found out, he tried to rescind the deal but was not successful. The Daily Mail said he even had 2 ministers come to the house and bless it in order to get rid of any evil spirits. Through the years, he tried to sell the house, but also did not meet with success. 8 years later, Betts met the same fate as Russell and his daughter. His murderer, Alante Saunders, 18, met him on a telephone chat line. They agreed to meet at Betts' home, and he left the front door unlocked. Saunders and 3 accomplices showed up, and Betts was robbed, shot, and left to die. Saunders was eventually convicted and sentenced to life in prison. He was one of 4 men charged in the crime. One of them, Joel Johnson, was shot to death in 2012 by a man he attempted to rob at gunpoint. He had served 18 months in connection to the Betts murder and had been released for 15 months before he died. Betts' family surrendered the property to the bank and were quoted as saying that if they had their way, they'd bulldoze the house over. In a strange twist, O'Neill McGeen, a man who Betts dated for 10 years during the 1990s, also met a violent end. After their breakup, Betts moved to Maryland. McGeen ended up in Mazatlan, Mexico, a Sinaloa state. McGeen returned to the U.S. for Betts' funeral and was quoted saying that he would be more careful in who he met. Unfortunately, with the passage of years, the fear dulled, and in 2016, he agreed to meet a man he met on a gay dating app at a hotel. He vanished along with $16,000 from his bank account. After receiving texts demanding a ransom of $26,000, the request suddenly stopped. Donnie McGeen, O'Neill's brother, flew to Mexico and contacted the FBI and DEA. Police investigators believe that Jorge Guillen Gonzalez, McGeen's former lover and business partner, with the help of 3 other men, lured McGeen into a kidnap plot. They beat him so badly that his lungs were punctured and he died. They rolled the body in a hotel curtain, stuffed him in a suitcase, and buried him under the fresh concrete in a yard across town. The FBI warned Donnie McGeen not to look at O'Neill's face, so he identified his little brother by the Irish family crest tattooed on his shoulder. Eventually, 3 of the men were arrested and 1 escaped. McGeen's relatives fear the case will never be solved, as the prior governor of Sinaloa was voted out of office amid accusations of corruption. The new governor, Quirino Ordaz Copé, never responded to Donnie McGeen's inquiries regarding the investigation of his brother's murder. He later learned that the governor owned the Pacific Palace Hotel where O'Neill was killed. Ordaz served as governor until 2021 and is presently the ambassador to Spain from Mexico. Now going on to the actual mansion murders. Delivery of the $40,000 the killer demanded from the Savopoulos family did not save them. An assistant for the family delivered the cash. Inside the house, the victims were bound with duct tape and eventually beaten to death with a baseball bat. The boy was stabbed and burned as well. The house was then set on fire. The perpetrators also stole the family's blue Porsche, which was found abandoned in a church parking lot. 2 teenage daughters, Katerina and Abigail, were away at school when the murders were committed. Another housekeeper, Nellie Gutierrez, who worked at the Savopoulos home for almost 20 years, escaped because she was cleaning another property for the family. On the day of the murder, she received a text asking her not to come to the house. When the fire department responded to the blaze, they found the bodies inside. Darren Wint was identified as a prime suspect via a DNA match to a crust of Domino's pizza delivered to the house during the time the family was held hostage. He was a welder who once worked at American Iron Works, which Sava Savopoulos owned, which led police to believe the family was not chosen randomly. Wint immigrated to the U.S. from Guyana in 2000. He had a history of serious criminal charges and was convicted in 2009 of second-degree assault. He had also been charged with theft, assault, a sexual offense, and weapons possession in the past. Prosecutors believed Wint had helped in the perpetration of the crime. However, he was the only one charged. Wint was found guilty of 20 counts of kidnapping, extortion, and premeditated first-degree murder in 2018 and was sentenced to 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. In December 2021, Wynn presented an appeal for a new trial, saying the judge blocked his lawyers from calling an additional witness in his 2018 trial, which, according to Wynn's attorneys, could prove that Wynn's brothers were the real culprits. In March 2022, the court heard arguments for overturning Wynn's conviction. The appeals court will decide whether the trial judge erred and if that warrants a new trial. The decision will be in a written opinion at a future date, and it will be interesting to see, indeed, what comes of that appeal, and if Wynn is given a new trial. Now let's go on to another. This is out of the U.S. Sun, and I think this is. This will be like, oh, Marlene, you're going down paranoia, terror, whatever. But I'm sure there's enough sci-fi fans out there to get what I want to talk about on this article, which is titled "Drone Wars: Terrifying Video Shows Chinese Super Drones Hunting Humans in Packs Amid Fears They Could Be Primed to Kill." All right. Terrifying footage has emerged showing Chinese super drones hunting down humans in packs, sparking fears they could soon be primed to kill. The breakthrough achievement has prompted concerns that they could be put to sinister use. A team from Zhejiang University in China released incredible footage of 10 lightweight drones filmed moving swiftly between trunks, uneven ground, weeds, and tangled branches. The impressive bit of hardware runs off an algorithm and charts surroundings in real time, meaning it can readjust its flight path in an instant. According to experts, these high-tech drones update every few milliseconds, which means they can avoid colliding with other objects and can quickly regroup with others to flight with super efficiency. And because they don't need GPS signal, they can be easily deployed in areas with poor satellite coverage. Experts say the tech will make surveying remote wildlife or hunting for survivors in disaster zones much easier. But in a chill turn of events, the crew at Zhejiang University also trialed the drones on a man making his way through a cluster of trees. The bots were also to keep focus even when the man hid behind objects to shield himself from the cameras. Addressing the breakthrough in the journal Science Robotics, researchers said, quote, "The swarm's capability of navigation and coordination in these films has attracted and inspired numerous researchers. Here we take a step forward to such a future," end quote. Dr. Jonathan Aitken from Sheffield University hailed the development, telling New Scientist it was an excellent achievement. To achieve a quality map built from a distributed collection of robots of the detail demonstrated is an excellent piece of engineering. To couple this with the additional successful navigation and avoidance of obstacles, and critically other members of the swarm, is an excellent achievement. Okay, well, and it's not the first time China's tech development has been a cause for concern. Last year, Beijing unveiled a terrifying new war machine that can unleash swarms of suicide drones at troops and tanks. A clip showed dozens of the deadly devices being launched from a weapon system mounted to the back of a truck and also being dropped from helicopters. The China Academy of Electronics and Information Technology's video showed 48 attack weapons being launched with compressed air before using an electric propeller to fly towards and then overwhelm their targets. Each carries highly explosive charges designed to rip through tanks and annihilate armored vehicles. Paul Shar, former senior Pentagon official and expert on drone warfare, said the clip shows how well China's drone program is progressing. He said, "We can't see from the Chinese video whether the drones are communicating and coordinating with each other. It could just be a launch of drones like the launch of missiles from a multiple launch rocket systems. However, the test shows that China is developing swarm drone systems and they could be operational in a few years. The drones look similar to China's CH-901 unmanned aerial vehicle, which was first seen in 2018. They can hover in the skies for up to 40 minutes while scouring for target, according to experts from the Warzone website." I hadn't heard about this one, that like you could, and this is the thing, when you think the initial concept of using these drones, like they said, for map making, for finding people in disaster scenarios, places maybe that are inaccessible or hard to get to, Yeah, especially when time is of an essence. I could see the positive side to this, but then it always comes down to, like it always does, is like who's manning the controls? Who's manning the controls? And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that what we call different versions or dystopian sci-fi movies, where the most famous of them being Terminator, but there's other versions of that where basically drones are used to hunt humans and not just on a not to demonstrate. But yes, something to think about. Okay, let's go on to the next story, which is, by the way, off to the Goodwill. This is out of DNYUZ. It's titled "Goodwill sold a bust for $34.99, and it's an ancient Roman relic." Oh, I can tell people, my people that love to go off to Goodwill and see what they can find. Okay, it starts off. Laura Young was browsing through a Goodwill store in Austin, Texas in 2018 when she found a bust for sale. It was resting on the floor under a table and had a yellow price tag slapped on its cheek, $34.99. She bought it, as in $34.99. Turns out it wasn't just another heavy stone curio suitable for plunking in the garden. It was an actual Roman bust from the late 1st century BC or early 1st century AD, which had been part of a Bavarian king's art collection from the 19th century until it was looted during World War II. How it got to Texas remains a mystery, but the most likely path suggests it was taken by an American soldier after the Bavarian king's villa in Germany was bombed by Allied forces. This week it went on display at the San Antonio Museum of Art, next to signage acknowledging Miss Young's role in its improbable 2,000-year journey from ancient Rome to the Goodwill boutique on Far West Boulevard. Next year it will be returned to the Bavarian government under an agreement with Miss Young that ended her own complex relationship with the ancient artifact, which she had kept on a credenza in her living room for the last 3.5 years. She had named it Dennis Reynolds after a character from the comedy series It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Like the vain and narcissistic cad, the 52-pound marble bust was a very difficult, cold, aloof, emotionless man that caused some problems for me, Miss Young said. When Miss Young, a dealer of antique and vintage goods, first spotted the bust in, as reported, when she first spotted the bust in Austin, she knew it was probably valuable. I got outside in the light, she said. He had chips to the base. He had clear repairs. He looks old. I've been to museums. I've seen Roman portraits had before. She did a Google image search for Roman bust and realized they look a lot like my guy. After taking the bust home strapped in a seatbelt in the front seat of her car, she contacted 2 auction houses, Bonhams and Sotheby's, both of which confirmed that her hunch was right. The bust was from ancient Rome. Miss Young was on vacation celebrating her 40th birthday when she got the email from Bonhams. She wanted to return home immediately. He was at my house, alone, she said. But subsequent research authenticated by the Bavarian government soon confirmed that Miss Young would not be able to sell the piece and fulfill the fantasy of anyone who has ever haunted Goodwill stores and yard sales for priceless treasures. At some point before 1833, the bust had been acquired by Ludwig I, a Bavarian king, who displayed in the courtyard of the Pompeianum his replica of a Roman villa in Pompeii, in the Bavarian town of Affensburg, according to Miss Young's lawyer, Leila A. Amindole. The Pompeianum was heavily damaged by Allied bombing in 1944 and 1945, and although some of its objects survived, others disappeared. The looting of art of the Nazis has gained widespread attention, but because the bust ended up in Texas, it is likely that an American service member either stole it or traded for it after the war, Miss Amindole said. That meant Miss Young was not the rightful owner because Germany had never sold the piece or abandoned the title to it. Miss Young said Goodwill was also unable to provide answers about the bust's origins. Immediately, I was like, okay, I cannot keep him, and also I cannot sell him, Miss Young said. It was extremely bittersweet, to say the least. But I only have control over what I can control. And art theft, looting during a war is a war crime. I can't be a party to it. So Miss Young struck an agreement to have the bust shipped back to Bavaria. In exchange, she will receive only a small finder's fee, which, as Miss Aminadole declined to disclose. We are very pleased that a piece of Bavarian history that we thought was lost has reappeared and will soon be able to return to its rightful location, Bernd Schreiber, president of the Bavarian Administration of State-Owned Palaces, Gardens, and Lakes, said in a statement released by the San Antonio Museum of Art. The bust is believed to portray either a son of Pompey the Great, who was defeated in battle by Julius Caesar, or Nero Claudius Drusus Germanicus, a Roman commander whose forces once occupied German territory. The San Antonio Museum of Art will display the bust until May 2023, which was important to Miss Young. He's been hidden for 70 to 80 years. I think he deserves some attention, she said, and I think he deserves some attention in Texas. Last month, she handed over the bust to the museum, leaving her with only a 3D printed model of the piece that she keeps in her living room. It's hard a little bit because this is probably going to be the coolest thing I ever find. And it's over, Miss Young said. But there's always something else to find. If you're an antique dealer, there's always something else. Wow, that's so interesting. Then we go on. This is another story. A little bit morbid, but I think it was, as far as old stuff. This is out of All That's Interesting, titled Grisly 18th Century Love Notes Sewn with Human Hair, to be displayed at London Museum. Anna Maria Radcliffe likely embroidered the message with the hair of her husband, James Radcliffe, who was executed in 1716 for rebelling against the King of England. After her husband was executed in 1716, Anna Maria Radcliffe sat down to do some embroidery, but she used unusual tools. For cloth, she used the bedsheet from his Tower of London prison cell, and for thread she used human hair, possibly plucked from his severed head. This embroidered bedsheet is an extraordinary item which would have taken months or years to create, explained Beverly Cook, curator of social history at the Museum of London. The care and devotion speaks to Anna's personal devastation and remarkable character, determined to protect the memory of her husband long after his death. Anna Maria's husband, James Radcliffe, the third Earl of Derwentwater, was executed on February 24, 1716, for his involvement in the Jacobite Rebellion of 1715. James and other rebels had tried and failed to put the son of a deposed Catholic king back on the throne. James was sent to the Tower of London to await his beheading. Though Anna Maria often joined him there, James also sent her love letters in which he called her his dearest worldly treasure and urged her to be courageous and not melancholy. It would be lovely to think that they were lying together beneath the sheet, said Cook, noting that the sheet didn't look too worn and may have only been used during his 4-month stay in the tower. Obviously, we can't prove that, but it's likely that she conceived their daughter at that time. Following James' execution at the age of 26, his heart was sent to an Augustinian convent. Anna Maria was given his body, with his head sewn back on. That would have given her the opportunity of removing some of his hair, said Cook, noting that Anna Maria kept some of her husband's hair in a locket. And we do know that. Obviously, taking locks of hair was quite a common thing for people to do. Cook also speculated that Anna Maria used both James' hair and her own, since the hair sewn into the bedsheet looks like two distinct colors. Other decorations on the sheet includes flowers, leaves, and a wreath in the shape of a heart. Unlike the love message, these additions were stitched with linen thread. Anna Maria later fled the country with her children, settling in Brussels in the hopes of raising them Catholic. Sadly, she died in 1723 from smallpox. But the bedsheet that Anna Maria had embroidered with human hair lived on. Generations of James supporters and other activists guarded it over the centuries until the Museum of London obtained it in 1934. In the end, the execution of rebels like James Radcliffe staunched, but did not stop, the push by Jacobites to restore a Catholic to the throne. Though they failed in 1715 to place the old pretender, James Stuart, son of the deposed Catholic King James II and 7th of England and Scotland, on the throne, his son Charles Edward Stuart led the next Jacobite rebellion in 1745. However, Stuart also suffered a bloody defeat. Indeed, the bedsheet represents one of England's violent history. It will be part of an executions exhibit at the Museum of London Docklands in October of 2022. The exhibit will also display other items from 700 years of executions in England, such as clothing worn by King Charles I at his beheading in 1649, a gallows reactions, and letters written by the condemned. Yeah, and we think of this as being very morbid, but then, taking hair, especially from your husband's decapitated head, but at the same time, unless you had enough money that maybe you had a portrait done, There was no photographs. This was, I guess, the best effort of retaining a memory of a deceased loved one, which is, to say the least, very unusual. Um, let's go on to this one. I thought this. Let's go into true crime a little bit. This is from the New York Post, and I love cold cases. I love to follow up on cold cases. This one's titled "Woman Charged in Lover's 1996 Murder After Cops Get Anonymous Letter." A woman who claimed an intruder busted into her California apartment and killed her boyfriend more than 2 decades ago has been charged in the cold case slaying after an anonymous letter was sent to investigators, police said. Jade Benning, who was living in Santa Ana in January 1996, told cops a black suspect forced his way into the apartment she shared with her 22-year-old boyfriend, Christopher Hervey, and stabbed her partner several times during a 3 a.m. attack, killing him. Benning, also 22 at the time, gave general statements to investigators about the alleged break-in, during which neighbors told cops they heard a loud argument inside the apartment for about 15 minutes. Investigators proceeded to work the case, but weren't able to make any arrests until the receipt of an anonymous letter to Santa Ana cops in January 2020 that implicated Benning in her former flame's murder, police said. Benning, who was arrested Tuesday near her home in Austin, Texas, was taken into custody after an extensive follow-up investigation, including forensic testing. She's now set to be extradited back to California to face the murder rap, where she'll be held on $1 million bail, police said. 5 years after allegedly killing her boyfriend, Benning moved to Las Vegas in 2001 and later to Austin. Hervey had been discovered dead with multiple wounds to his chest and body, although a weapon was not recovered. Okay, and now who sent the anonymous letter? And after so many years, who knew obviously about this and didn't say anything for 20 years? I hope they follow up and give information on that. This is a story also out of the New York Post, and I remember when it originally came out, which was a few days before this story that I'm about to read to you. It was like, mother of New York police officer gets shot when she answers the door. At first blush, it looks like, was this woman targeted because her son was a police officer? But it turns out it wasn't exactly that. It's titled, Anna Torres slays suspect Giuseppe Canzani, a gambling addict. The man accused of fatally shooting a Queen's tarot card reader was a gambling addict who blamed his victim because his luck had recently run out, a new report said. Giuseppe Canzani, 41, allegedly killed Anna Torres, 51, because he believed she'd placed a hex on him that causes betting to go south. The guy had been going to her for years, a source told the outlet. He had had bad luck for the past couple of weeks, including with gambling. He went to her house and shot her. Canzani confessed to cops he shot Torres because he believed that she was a witch and had cast a spell on him that led him to his winner's draught, sources have said. Torres, the mother of an NYPD officer from Ozone Park, was shot in the head at her home Wednesday. Canzani, a City Department of Transportation employee who works on bridge repairs, was suspended without pay Thursday. As you know, for those of you watching the video, he came in with a hoodie, he had gloves on with a gun, and he had one of these surgical masks over his face. Then it goes on to say, a neighbor described that Canzani is married to a teacher and has twins, and they hadn't been working recently. I didn't expect this from him. Crazy, said the neighbor who declined to give his name. I was shocked. Everybody on the block is in shock. He's just like everybody else. I've never seen him angry, the resident said. I've heard him raise the voice once in a while, but nothing special. If people parked in front of where he lives, he'll tell them to move, and they move. The suspect's lawyers, Kerry Sorhis, has claimed his client suffers from mental health problems. He suffers from anxiety as well as depression. He does not have his medication, Katsorhi said at Canzani's arraignment. In my 50 years of practice, I say he's a prime example of a person who should be examined psychiatrically. In my opinion, I understand about, when people spiral, but somebody close to him had to have noticed that this man wasn't spiraling, that he was ready to commit murder. And I hope they investigate that, as in giving a heads up that maybe this person is about to do something extraordinarily horrible. Um, let's stay with the New York Post. This just came out, and this is talking about uh, things are I don't want to say antiques. It doesn't necessarily have to be an antique, but things of value, or maybe not valuable then, but then valuable, that are put away and forgotten about, and then guess what? They're worth a lot of money. This is titled "Battle Looms Over 1.5 Million Wizard of Oz Dress Found in Storage Closet." She's not over the rainbow about this Hollywood memorabilia auction. A Wisconsin woman has gone to court to stop the sale of a long-lost piece of movie history, the blue and white gingham pinafore dress worn by Judy Garland in The Wizard of Oz, which could be worth $1.5 million. The iconic costume was one of 5 versions of the dress worn by Garland's Dorothy in the 1939 classic. It's set to be auctioned off May 24th by Bonhams in Los Angeles at the behest of Catholic University of Washington, D.C., where it was discovered in a shoebox inside a storage closet last year. I was just surprised after all this time. Here it had been found, and here it is being rushed off to the auction house. Barbara Hartke, 81, said, "I just want to know who has ownership over this. I'd like to see the documentation," she added. The costume, complete with a short-sleeve blouse of cream organdy and Garland's name written on a label on the inside, was a present from actress Mercedes McCambridge to Hartke's uncle, Reverend Gilbert Hartke, a famous in his own right priest and professor who founded the university's drama department. The family contends in a $3 million Manhattan federal court lawsuit. It's unclear how McCambridge came to own the dress. By the way, short aside, Mercedes McCambridge did a lot of movies, but a lot of people, what she sometimes is famously known, in the movie The Exorcist, she was the one that did the demon's voice. Let's keep going. I met Mercedes McCambridge a few times, and my memory is mostly of her fondness for Uncle Gib, Hartke recalled. He helped her battle alcoholism. That was the idea, that this was gifted to Gib from her out of deep appreciation. Oscar winner McCambridge, a Garland contemporary who is best known in the modern era for voicing the demon which possessed Linda Blair's character, The Exorcist, was the artist in residence at the university from 72 to 73. I didn't know they were going to mention that. The Wizard of Oz dress, one of only 2 complete versions of the costume known to still exist, is being offered at a pre-auction estimate of $800,000 to $1.2 million. Another of the surviving Dorothy dresses went for more than $1.5 million in 2015. There was no effort to reach out to us or any of the family. It was just like, there it was. It was found in this box, and then immediately we're off to the races, and that was that. Was there anything else found? Wondered Hartke, a retired Chicago public school teacher. Father Hartke, the youngest of 7 kids who grew up on the north side of Chicago, died in 1986 at age 79 of a heart condition. He was a well-known figure in Washington, D.C., counseling presidents from Harry Truman to Jimmy Carter and mentoring future theater critic Walter Kerr and actors such as Jon Voight and Henry Gibson. It's been a whirlwind few days for Hartke's remaining family, who learned of the dress auction via news reports, said great-nephew Tony Lehman. We're just focusing right now on what's the ownership, Lehman, 60, said. Catholic University just ignored the family here, said lawyer Anthony Scordo. The college insisted that it is the rightful owner of the dress. The actress Mercedes McCambridge donated the dress to Father Hartke in his capacity as a professor of drama at Catholic University. Her intent was to donate the dress to support the drama students at Catholic University. The decision was made to auction the dress in order to support the students. The university added that Father Hartke, as a priest in the Dominican order, had taken a vow of poverty. He vowed not to receive or accept any gifts as his own personal property, and at the time of his death did not have any tangible items in his estate. Barbara Hartke says there's no reason to rush the sale. It's not going to evaporate, she said of the dress. I think it's sensible to decide. What's the message we want here? What's the tribute to Uncle Gib, to his kindness, and also Mercedes McCambridge and the good people who were touched by him? I think all those things have to be considered. Bonhams did not respond to a message seeking comment. And there you go. Because the family is saying he was our uncle, and the Catholic Church is saying he was our priest. And it's true. These Dominican, not him, in poverty. They don't know stuff. So what is it that by all intents it goes to the church? I'm going to follow up and see what happens with this. So anyway, guys, I hope you like today's venture into the eerie world, and I will be back with you soon with another set of interesting tidbits of the unexplained. And until then, take care.